beginning guitar series wouldn't be complete without a video showing you how to tune your guitar. Otherwise, the chords that you've worked so hard to memorize and learn to change aren't going to sound good if your guitar isn't in tune. A lot of times people will buy their first guitar and take guitar lessons, and even if they own a tuner, they may not know how to use it, and the guitar teacher will tune the guitar during the lesson, and it won't get tuned again until the next week's lesson. Well, during the week while you practice, the guitar just starts sounding worse and worse as the strings get further and further out of tune. So let's look at how to tune the guitar, the pitches it should be tuned to, and how to keep it in tune so you'll sound great every time you play. One mistake that a lot of beginners make is to forget to turn the volume up on their guitar when they're tuning an electric or an electric acoustic guitar. The high E string is ironically the string that's closest to the floor. We call it the high string because it's the highest pitched string on the guitar. So this is the thinnest string, and it rings as an E, so that's tuned to an E note. The second string is a B. The third string is a G. The fourth string is a D. The fifth string is an A. And the sixth string is an E. It's very important to memorize these notes, as this is what's called standard tuning. It's used in most songs, and there are some other alternate tunings that are used in other songs to give different chord voicings and sounds, and we'll talk about some of those later on. The first thing to think about is what kind of tuner you need. A lot of times in a starter pack you can get a pretty inexpensive guitar or bass tuner, and what those will do is tune to just the pitches that we mentioned. So they'll tune to E, B, G, D, A, or E. The downside to that is that you can't tune to other alternate pitches that might be used on another song. And the other thing is that sometimes if a string is far enough off, the guitar tuner may not be able to hear it if it's not close enough to a pitch. So for instance, if my third string, which is supposed to ring as a G, if that's so far off that it's ringing as an F, a regular guitar tuner may not be able to hear that. However, a chromatic tuner, which is what I'm using here, will just tell me that that's an F, and I'll know that I need to tune that back up to a G. So now I know that I'm on the correct pitch. So depending on if you think there might be a need of using alternate tunings, or if your guitar ends up getting really, really out of tune, a chromatic tuner may be the way to go, and that'll last you for years to come. So as far as actually tuning notes, most of the time your guitar will end up flat. Strings are tightened, and so sometimes as they're sitting around, just the temperature can make them loosen. Usually it's when the tuning pegs get bumped, it'll make the string loosen, and so you'll usually be tuning up to pitch. So let's look at how to do that, and then we'll talk about what to do if it ends up being sharp or past the pitch. So you can see in this case, if I've just lowered the tuning of this E string, the lights to the left are lit up. Now guitar displays can be a little bit different on the tuners. In this case I've got red lights and a green light in the center. Your tuner may have an LCD display, it may have a needle, but generally some type of object that moves toward the center will show you whether your guitar is in tune or not. So when my indicator is to the left, that shows me that the pitch is flat, or it's below what it should be. So what I'll do is gradually raise that, not too much at a time, and as I start to get close, you can see here the red light and that center green light are both lit up, showing me that I'm very close to pitch. I'm going to very slowly continue to tighten that peg, but just a little bit at a time so I don't overshoot. And as I arrive there, you can see that just the green light is on. If your guitar tuner had a needle display, the needle would be up in the center of the display. Now you'll notice as the string continues to ring and the note decays a little bit, sometimes that light or that needle will shift a little bit, but usually it's just where after you attack the string, it'll show that it's in tune. So at this point my string's in tune. And I would go through and do that with the rest of the strings as well. One thing I should mention though, if your guitar is really out of tune, sometimes having less tension on the neck can actually make the neck shift just a little bit, and it's pretty normal in a guitar for the neck to have a little flex. So because of that, you'll want to tune your guitar twice so that it'll sort of shift everything where it needs to be. So you'll get everything pretty close and then tune it one more time in case that neck has flexed just a little bit with the tighter strings. Let's also look at what to do if a string is sharp. So let's go to this second string. I'm just going to turn that so that it is sharp. You can see now the lights are to the right. Rather than trying to lower that and get it right on the pitch, that usually doesn't work well, and also the string can kind of get some kinks in it as you loosen it, and then it'll loosen later as you're playing. So the best thing when you're tuning is always to go up to pitch rather than down to it. So if my string ends up being sharp, what I'm going to do is just lower it so that it's definitely flat. So I just loosened it on the tuning peg and put it so that the indicator is to the left, and then I'll bring it up to pitch. So we've talked about the pitches of the strings, we've talked about how to bring it up to pitch, we've talked about how to put it in tune and tuning it twice so that it stays in tune. One other thing that we'll mention is how to make sure that your strings stay in tune after you've changed them. Many people don't know when they first start playing guitar that when you change your guitar strings, they don't necessarily stay in pitch very well. There's winds that are on the tuning peg that need to be tightened, and the string just sort of has to settle into the groove to where it'll stay in tune as you play it. If you don't stretch out your strings after you've changed them, your guitar will basically go out of tune every 2 minutes, so having to tune it that often doesn't make for a very efficient practice time. So if you look, we're here on the 12th fret. That's the one with the 2 dots on the side on most guitars. And after I've changed my strings, I'm going to tune my guitar, and then on each string I'm going to grab here at the 12th fret and just pull it out. You notice I'm not pulling it out a whole bunch to where it would break, but just between about 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch. I'm just pulling it out, and that's stretching it and putting a little extra tension on it. That'll make the pitch go flat, so you tune it back up, go back to the same string, pull it out again. You'll have to repeat that same thing about 4 or 5 times, and then the string will start staying in tune even when you stretch it like that. So I go through and do that to each of the other strings, just stretching them out 4 or 5 times and tuning them back up. Once you've gone through that whole process, it takes about 10-15 minutes, but once you've done it, your guitar will stay in tune much better. You can tune it and it'll stay in tune through most of your practice time, and you'll keep sounding good every time you play.